super excited to have Ben Wright, and there is no bicycle wheels in your background. So I'm really thrown off. The last 5 years that I've known you, I think every Zoom call I've had with you, there's been bicycle wheels in your background. So I don't know what to do with myself right now. I need an explanation.
Well, I mean, that's my favorite Spaces location in Toronto. Spaces
Okay.
Queen West for anybody who knows Toronto and knows that location. The funny story is that's Wayne Berger, formerly of IWG's kind of pride and joy. And it allowed me to essentially be anywhere and kind of feel like I'm consistent, which has been a big part of my life for the last 5 years. This is my
Yeah,
home. This is my home office. I decided to actually have a real background. I could probably even unblur it. That's how like authentic it is. But
I love that.
yeah, this is my home office in Boulder, and a little more context specific type backgrounds is where I'm going. I don't. Do I really know why? No, but I made
That's
that change.
Well, it's awesome. Well, if you don't know Ben Wright, who's had deep roots in the industry over the last, 6 plus 7 years.
It's been 8.
Right. So, I love these conversations because you have so many big conversations on a global stage with Instant. And then, before that, you were at Square Foot. Is it Square? Was it
Yeah,
Square?
square foot.
Square Foot.
Yep.
And then you had your own deal. And you've released a piece recently on AI, so I wanted to jump in and I know it's a multiple part series and it's just the first part of it, but we don't do prep calls, but we did have a little preface on, hey, what are we talking about? How are we talking about it? A quick couple minutes, and you started off with a quote, which was in your article that I think is a big part that kind of drove you into these conversations. And sounds like you got some big meetings coming up with a bunch of executives and stuff. So I just kind of wanted to have kind of a real uncensored conversation as to who you're talking to and what you're doing and all kinds of stuff. I mean, obviously we all know the AI stuff that Francesco's doing with Unity, and then you've got, some other vendors kind of doing some really cool stuff with dynamic pricing and all that stuff with Eyal and his team over there. So why don't you just kind of jump in as to what's been keeping you busy chasing this rabbit trail and this new series?
Yeah, I mean, so at Instant Group IWG, one of the things I've done is I led the officespace.com website, which is the biggest in the group, and it was generating all manner of leads. This started about a year ago, and we needed, some of them were really good, some of them were really bad, but we really needed a lot of help to sort through the good from the bad and whatever. And so we hired Fran and Unity to do that. So that was my first kind of, you know, I was leading that effort. I was not the tech guy on that effort. And so what that was kind of dipping my toes into it. Where I've gone since then is, I mean, when you're 54 and old, you've seen some things before. And what this time reminds me of, there were a couple cycles. I was in digital marketing in the late 90s, which probably turn off most of your audience when I say that. But just for to like take everybody back, 1998 is when Google as a company was founded. There were a lot of new things that were going on. And I remember everybody was talking about the internet. There was this massive run up in stocks and internet stocks and craziness and then a massive crash. And to me, this feels eerily similar in terms of people talking about the promise of a technology, AI compared to the internet, and money chasing that, and people kind of rushing into it, but may or may not know what the outcome is going to be for their business, right? Now,
Yep.
I want to remind some people, companies like Amazon and Meta, Google, the companies that are dominating today's economy and on the world stage were all started around that time. And there were times when people thought, I think Amazon stock went down 95% in that period, right? So people thought, oh, it's over. I think we're going to have that with AI. I think we're going to have really catastrophic changes, both up and down. But I really believe that this is a transformative technology. So how I've tried to, it's funny, I got a plaque once from LinkedIn. They just sent it to me. They said, congratulations, you're in one of our first million users, right? Well, I think there's hundreds of millions now. So in retrospect, it makes me look like an early adopter. Truthfully, back then, I was like, oh, I see a lot of people using this. What's this about? And that's kind of my approach to AI. So I've been doing a lot of research, and I think the main thing I wanted with the piece that I released last week, which is part one in a series, was what's this really mean for your business, right? And we're going to touch on a bunch of different topics, but really, what does it mean financially and from a staffing perspective and from a member experience perspective? And then there'll be a part where I dust off my old economist predictions, which is how is the labor market going to change and what are people really saying? What are the consensus? I don't know, but I know smart people who do know. And so I'll try to interpret what the super smart people are saying.
So real fast, the wrong goes wronger and the right goes righter
Yeah.
was the quote. And
Sorry, I totally didn't address that. So
no, you're fine.
here, here's what that means. That means automation's amazing, right? It can really help us. And we've all automated stuff. Like anybody that's got a Tesla has some automation features. Anybody that has a kitchen has some automated features, right? So if you have great data, great processes, you really understand your business, you're ripe for automation, right? If you have unclear processes, poor data, and you really don't understand your business very well, then you're actually going to spiral. So I really liked this quote. I'll probably ask for permission about who said it, see if he or she is willing to be named, but it's somebody that I really respect in the industry who is making big moves in AI. But yeah, it basically means like, look, if you're ready, this can be transformative. But the point is, most across the global economy are not ready. And many workplace operators, I think, are really struggling with just the basic sales process, the basic data quality, because it takes labor and it takes time to get that ready. So I think it's especially applicable to the workplace, the flexible workspace industry. And just to be clear, it was said by a leader in the flexible workspace industry.
Well, and that's what I'm about to say. I know who it is because you shared that, and he's been in the industry a long time, and so lots of respect for him. But yeah, I think it's so interesting that I mean, AI is going to affect the way, or it does affect the way we operate all our spaces, right? It affects hospitality, it affects so much. And unlike the early adopter, I'm a late adopter. And when it comes to technology, and so I'm just getting caught up with like Chat GPT and Gronk and stuff. And it's just like what they can do is absolutely amazing. Right. I've got friends that are like, the worst thing that could have happened was you learning that you could put pictures and memes together and be like, hey, put this person's face here, or Gronk allows for you to create videos based off of people and ask them to do stuff. And so this one cracked me up. I did, as you well know, I do a bunch of stuff with military guys, and I did a training in which they made us do yoga every morning. So imagine a bunch of retired military guys that are all, you know, all jacked up trying to do yoga in the morning. And so we had a picture of one of the guys, and we called him Papa Smurf. So literally one of the guys put it into Gronk and had him doing his poses and like transform from his human version to like Papa Smurf from the Smurfs. And it was just like mind blown that it could take and do this, right? And we're seeing it happen with a bunch of stuff. And so, how we can obviously that's applying it in a social fun aspect, but how it can be applied to overall business is incredible, right? And it's been again, I started off with Unity AI and Flex Space, or what Flex Workspace is doing on some of the stuff, and so but the chatbot is awesome, right? The agent and all that stuff, but it's only touching the surface of how people can use technology to operate their spaces.
Yeah. So to kind of given our audience is flexible workspace, I think the one of the things I wanted to tackle was, hey, is this a cost savings? Like, so if you're So speaking of the CEOs, COOs, kind of folks at that level, is this a cost savings? Is the impact of this on your business going to be cost savings, or is it going to be additional revenue? And sometimes just putting, and I'm going to put this out this week, sometimes just putting out a P&L, right? And saying, here's how AI can impact your P&L line by line has been really helpful. So I interviewed, 5 or 6 people that you and I both know, Giovanni, and I said, what are you seeing? What are you planning? I mean, just to prove like innovation is basically just stealing ideas from smart people, right? So that's what I did. I just talked to, some of the leaders in the industry about, hey, what are they planning on? What's working? What's not working? And then how does that apply to their P&L? So here's the summary of what came. I think there's an opportunity to grow top line in our industry more than saving on bottom line. And I think you're going to know exactly why, because of what
Yep.
you do. Half the expense of a flexible workspace operator is what?
Their real estate.
It's their real estate. That's really tough to save money on real estate with an AI chatbot.
Yeah. Yeah, for
so,
sure.
so we'll get that out of the way first. Like the opportunity is more on top line than it is on bottom line. So what that should do is I think the industry could kind of have a little bit of a sigh of relief here. If you work in a center, there's not a ton of labor to be saved into a center, right? So what is it? So this is where folks like FlexSpace AI come in, right? By automating and getting really premium pricing, appropriate pricing for meeting rooms and making that seamless. That's a top line solution. Another one is there's a company called Coho AI out of Britain that's using automation to help make sure that we're maximizing retention and that we're tying contract break dates to actual spaces, right? Like for a portfolio, most operators, as smart as they are, don't have a really clear view of how their products are generating revenue, when break dates are happening, and then how to connect those two. And so Coho.ai has used really great technology to make that happen, right? And that will drive probably the biggest revenue top line impact is just better managing your break dates and renewals, right?
Yeah.
Other examples are how you automate purchasing things like virtual office and delivering things like virtual office, right? So those things I think make up a really big top line opportunity for the industry. And do you want to talk about any of those before we move on to the kind of the operational savings?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I want to talk about all of it, right? That's why I got you on here. So, I mean, you lead the conversation, right? Is you know what you know, and you've been having, back to you made a great point. I think the best consultants slash just overall experts do exactly what you said. Is we basically mimic what other people have said until we understand it, right? And that's what I've done my entire career. And Michael Beretta over at IWG, who you worked side by side with without working side by side with, right? At Instant. But I mean, I still remember I regurgitated everything he said about the executive suite industry when I got into it until I actually understood what he was saying. And I mean, I still remember when we started talking, when you were at your shop and I was at AY, I started and I got frustrated at first because I'm like, he just posted exactly what we talked about on our call 2 days ago. And then I stepped back and I was like, you know what? That's not something that should upset me. It's something that is important because what our discussions were was to get information out there, right? And to have people continue to be educated. And so I started looking at it as a positive thing and not a negative thing of you regurgitating what we had said. But I think it's so important for us to learn from other people and to grow from other people, right? And sometimes I think that's the best way to do it is to mirror those conversations until we become a subject matter expert at it, right? And so
Well,
so cool.
I don't know about you. Like I get really uncomfortable when it seems like there's a big move happening and I really don't get it. Like like I'm sure we've all felt that way at different stages about AI, or many people felt that way about the internet. And I remember when the internet was kind of coming to be, that the business I started back then was a digital marketing company. And most of the questions were, why would I have a website? So that's how old I am, is those were the questions. Why would I do that?
Yeah.
Now, oh my God, like, I mean, our lives are online, right? And
Yeah.
so like we moved past websites. We're into like I had a conversation with a friend of mine who's a healthcare venture capitalist who basically outlined the future of your health records and how data is going to flow, and basically how you're going to have four different AI agents helping you manage your health proactively. And I'm like,
Yep.
well, that's different. So I think anyway, I think the idea of what I'm trying, the role that I'm trying to play is synthesizing, getting past kind of the, hey, is it a good thing or a bad thing, into, hey, what's the most likely outcome and how can it benefit, your business as a flexible workspace operator. And what that does for me emotionally is, I think there's all kinds of stuff about humanoid robots and people's jobs being replaced and stock prices going up and down, and that's a lot of noise. But the truth is, if I'm a flexible workspace operator, I can grow my top line by as much as 10 to 15% by just automating stuff. And so taking it back to Unity, this is where Fran's company, I think, has had real impact, where you as a flex space operator can manage really what are 70% of the leads you get. In many cases, these smaller 1 to 2 seat leads that might want month to month, they might want a longer term, but you just couldn't do that with your sales team before this type of automation. And that's, to me, that's where it's like, oh, that's solid. And you and I both know folks, Gio, who are able to plan their future sales team around that. And that's
Yeah.
whether you whether you like technology or don't, I think here's kind of the rub. You and I both know, being on the board of GWA and whatever, people who are in this industry are really passionate about it, but they do have to have a profitable business. And if they
Yeah.
don't, they just can't, they're not going to write a check to do it for the rest of their life. Right.
Yeah.
And what I'm excited for is this can help some of the really committed people who are great operators actually have a sustainable business.
Yeah.
Whereas at other times it's been pretty tough with, growing costs and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So I think one of the coolest parts about it is speed to market, right? Or speed to hospitality, if you want to call it that. Is we live in a world where people are looking for office space after hours, right? Or before hours, any way you want to look at it. And whoever gets to those leads first and can address them is kind of ahead of the game, right? And so to me, that's where Unity AI and these things kind of play out, is going, when someone's looking at 12:30 at night, right, for space, a bot can address it so that when your sales team or your operations team gets to the office in the morning, they're already ready to address it, because the chat bot is already, the AI bot's already set up a tour or a call or whatever to take it from a lead or an inquiry to an actual opportunity. Right. And so, I mean, I think that's so vital, but also there's another side that AI can't replace. Right. I'll give you a great example. So Megan Slavin with 25N is actually coming in town to Dallas. They got in last night, and we've been working on some stuff here in town. So her team's coming in. We're looking at a couple spaces and stuff like that. And so my deal is, part of our industry is hospitality. And so I'm thinking, well, I want them to have a goodie bag when they get to their hotel, right? They're traveling in. Do they have water? What do they like? So literally, I reached out to Megan. I'm like, hey, what is Mecca and Sari like? And so I could get whatever they wanted in the goodie bags, not what I want, because Megan's weird. She doesn't eat meat. So I'm like, I always put a chomp stick or something in there just to be like, come on, try it, and vice versa. But so I had to find that out and then go to shopping for it, put it in the bags and drop it off. Right. AI can't do that, right? That's the part that can't be replaced, is that human interaction. And so I think that's the cool part where like we always talk about what a great job Grant Barnhill and his team do with hospitality and creating a CRM with people birth dates and anniversaries, and you can't replace that with a bot, but it does make it easier, right? And so I think that's such a vital important part that I think right now people are stuck on. Well, is AI going to replace us? No, AI is not going to replace us. It's going to make our life easier. It's going to increase our ability to service people.
Right. So I think if we talk about the hospitality part, I think we're moving into the kind of the operating costs, right? The core of how you run your business and what's the
Yep.
product that you deliver. And so, you know, that's where it's interesting that the top line, the revenue impact is going to be bigger than the cost savings on a percentage basis. And largely that's because of real estate, but it's also because this is actually a fairly labor efficient business that we're in, right?
Yeah.
But there are a few things that the industry is seeing. Number one is, how do I service these smaller leads, right? And how do I unlock this kind of on-demand product line for for my space? And so that there's both some top line revenue and some bottom line savings with your sales investment, right? So you and I both know where Unity or other folks have had success, it enables like, hey, maybe I'm not going to hire an additional salesperson. I've got that kind of covered. So that's part of it. Another part of it is billing, right? It can be really complex to manage contracting, break dates, billing, all kinds of things. And there's a lot of really interesting, kind of boring use cases for AI to start to solve that kind of stuff. Like, how do you process a contract? How do you get it into your system? How do you use that data? That's really critical to the operation of a business, but it's very, very manual. So that's that's one that I think we're anticipating some cost savings that will also help the business. Some of the other really, and this is interesting as I've gotten to know Yardi a little bit better and see their AI strategy. Then they've started an app store essentially for AI agents within their software stack, and it's a really important part of their overall business, not just their flex business. It's called Virtuoso. So what they did is they opened up that marketplace to people who have customers in the Yardi ecosystem. 75% of the agents that were created for Yardi did one thing: data cleaning, and data quality within their own systems, right? So
Yep.
think about how unsexy that is. And if you're a co-working operator with 15,000 square feet, you've got two people in your center. If you've got more locations, you've got some additional kind of staff to help do things. One of the things that always falls down the list is data entry. So
Yeah.
data entry is a very real cost. You need it to run your business, but it's hard to invest in it when you're already pretty lean. And so that's another, I think, interesting use case for how AI can solve and agents can solve problems and save money on the operating side.
Yeah. I just think there's so many different ways, right? And back to the point of sometimes it's not tangible, but yet and we've talked about this before and we've had her on, but like Gina in Village Workspace in Denver, who has her board of directors, which she created. Have you heard this?
Yeah. Who are all
So, I
AI
mean,
advisors.
yeah.
Yeah.
And they're like Sarah Blakely from Spandex and freaking Elon Musk and stuff like that. I mean, how cool is that, right? And it's amazing how many creative ways there is to do some of that.
It's
So,
interesting that you mentioned Gina. She was in my small group along with Frank Cottle for Anna Levine's
oh
love
my God,
love session. So
two totally opposite people.
I
And I'd
know.
love to know how that went. I mean, I've heard what Frank's comments were, so I'd love to hear
Yeah, I had Frank to my
this.
right and Gina to my left. And needless to say, I think I got to know them both much better. I mean, none of us were particularly shy, right? And I think we all bonded. But again, super different personalities. So that's when I think of Gina, that's what I think of. every time.
It was funny. So I heard Frank's comments were essentially he was like, "Oh man, she got out of this easily," because basically it wasn't a actual speech, right? It was a group activity. So it was definitely interesting,
Well,
for sure.
just to counter that a little bit, I haven't seen the feedback on the event, but I have to think that session. I mean, from the session that people talked about, and people loved that session, right? And
Oh, it
so,
was amazing because it was so different than everything else. And let's be honest, people, and that's why I think this podcast is, and we're about to get into that. This podcast that had so much success is because we're not just talking about business, right? We're talking about personalities and personal life. And, you know, if we don't at least get, oh, that's a great question no one's ever asked me, or that's a really good question, because we get stuck around business, right? And so to hear people's personalities and why they do what they do, and that's what that session got so deep into is I and the hard work I do with people and just the coaching side of stuff, but if you don't know what someone's trauma is, that has led them to, like, for me, I go out of my way for people above and beyond because I've struggled with mental health and I've been very blessed to have family and friends and my faith that's been there. And when I stop and I'm like, people that don't have those things, I try to be those things for them. And so that's what I loved about that whole topic in that session was understand. I mean, literally, I was walking around. I didn't join a group. I probably should have, but I enjoyed walking around because you could see people laughing, you could see people crying, you could see people hugging. And it was so interesting to see and how quickly it happened, right? Just with a few simple questions.
now it's interesting because at one point I had an interesting, maybe similar reaction to Frank's, which was like, wow, Industrious is doing so much right now. They are transforming their business, and it's a really important time for them with as they integrate more closely with CBRE. I want to hear about that. But really, if you take a step back, I believe that Anna was thinking, and she hasn't told me this, what's the number one thing I could do for this group? Right?
Yeah.
Is it tell them about my strategy? Probably not. Is it getting them connected to who they are as humans and to this community? I would argue yes. And so to me, it was a risk because you'd get people like Frank
Yeah.
or potentially me saying, well, wait, I wanted to hear about, this strategy or that. But it was so memorable, and at least, the other person in my group was Reed, right? And so it was fantastic. So, and to tie it back to our conversation, that isn't something that gets replaced by a bot.
Yeah.
So I've learned a lot. I've studied a lot about communication and what we're communicating when we communicate. And one of the things I've learned is your words are about 7% of what you're communicating, which bots are great at words. Your
Yep.
your tone is about 25% of what you're communicating, right? Which is I really had to learn because I'm a very expressive person. I had to learn how to use tone better because I would bring some frustration or some joy or something. My wife has this thing where I'm really excited to see her, but I'm kind of too excited. And she says, "Can you love me differently?" That was like bad tone, for like good intent, but bad tone. Just so excited. The remainder, 70%, is body language. Guess what? Bots can't do that. Right. And so what I think we did with that kind of intense thing is tying it back to AI is we did something that there's just no way that a bot could ever replace,
Yeah.
no matter how sophisticated. Like I have a meeting later today with a company that has holographic representations of people that they essentially you can collaborate with people seeing your
Yeah.
all of it. I'll be interested to see if that gets us to where at least we can communicate as humans through screens like this. I'll let you know after I see it.
So a couple things, and I'll start with where I want to lead, or I'll finish with where I want to lead next. But the problem with the holographic thing is, I guarantee you, there's ways to program the holographic bot to respond differently than how you're actually acting, right? And I think there's always a way to beat the system, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm big on counseling and counseling in person. I'm big on seeing people's, are their legs crossed? Are they clammy? Are they,
So that's the
are they
body language.
capitulating?
That's the 70% part.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
body language. But part of it too is where, I think it's going to come to a point where you can, if I want you to feel that I'm acting a certain way, I can program my holographic image to portray that to you. And I think those are part of the interesting parts when it comes to personality. But I think where I want to lead next is, I mean, back to communication, including emotion, body language, all that stuff, and you already tapped into it. Is marriage, right? And you not only you married, but now you've got two daughters, right? And so it's going. You've had to learn all those things. And part of what I love about you, and we had a great conversation in Austin, is we're very direct people. The problem is how I had to learn that it wasn't about what I said, it's how I said it, right? Because
Mhm.
I'm a very direct person and I'm a very blunt person. I had to learn that it's in the delivery, right? So having ladies in the home, you've had to learn that. And men's a little different too, right? We can punch each other in the face and move on. And I think that's the best way to do it. But you now have, I live in Dallas, as most people know, and you now have Dallas residents. So, quick shift into the personal side. So you've had a bunch of stuff going on. Your daughter's graduated. You've got one engaged, I think, and then you've got all kinds of new dynamics on the personal life front. So bring us up to speed on that.
So yes, I have three daughters, 22, 22, and 20. My daughter Savannah is engaged to be married in May 9th to
Yes, the 20-year-old always sneaks in. I always remember the twins, and I have to remember the 20-year-old. Three daughters. Okay, got it.
I think if you met the 20-year-old, you would not have a hard time remembering the 20-year-old. She's 6 feet tall, studies aerospace engineering, unbelievable skier, but also kind of a girl version of her dad.
Okay.
So what's really interesting, you caught me at an interesting time with this. Number one, I'm so excited for my daughter. Who's getting married. She's moving through this really quickly though. So we've had to kind of have this conversation about, hey, you're moving pretty fast. We're not trying to tell her to slow down, but we have said, look, you still have to go through the steps. And so we've been watching that. We love Abe and that's all going great. We spent some time with him and his family over the break, which is great. The really interesting thing, and it ties into technology, is my other twin daughter, Olivia, she met a young man, was introduced by her niece to a young man who's getting his master's at Duke. And they texted and FaceTimed for probably 2-3 months. The first time they're meeting is he flew to Dallas yesterday to basically spend 5 days with her. And I'm like, I love like innovative, kind of quirky, newish ways for relationships to get started and anything. Like I'm down for that. But oh my God, like imagine the first time you're meeting somebody, you're basically spending 5 days with them.
Yep.
Virtually exclusively. Like they're not staying in the same place or anything like that. But so I got a review of that guy who I've never met from the son-in-law to be yesterday.
Okay.
Because they
So
met.
Abe gave you a review. Okay.
And it was positive. So
Yeah.
it's it is a profound loss of control time for me right now.
Yeah.
And but hey, that can be amazing. That can lead to amazing things. So I'm having to be open to new kinds
Surrender.
of
You're
things.
having to surrender and realize that Ben is not in control anymore. Not that you were before, but now that they've got jobs and they're adulting, and it's funny. I do that with my parents sometimes. I'm like, you realize I'm 47 and I pay my own bills, right? And I've been doing this for a while. And so part of what I learned in one of the trainings is you tell people, I acknowledge your position. And I promise to wait carefully. It basically means thanks for caring, but I really don't care enough your response to really follow the lead of it. And so I think you're in an advisory role now to your children in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And sometimes ask for it and sometimes they don't. The the interesting thing for me to watch is watching my wife, who's really been all in as a mom, and then re-entered the workplace after staying home for 9 years, and after working for a while, started her own business, and she's got two businesses. And to watch her, she's actually done. She goes through different phases too with this, which is, ooh, they're not calling me back. That freaks me out. To being able to tolerate and see and celebrate this massive changes for all of them. Like
Yeah.
our youngest got a job at a company that makes rockets. And so she's going to live in LA doing that next summer. She's not going to live with us again. And so this is all in the last month that this stuff has happened. So it's really been a fascinating, humbling time. So
So I'll ask you this, because in my experience, even coming out of school and graduating from high school and even college, seeing my friends' parents go through this and even my own, and then kind of progressing through my life and being able to look at my friends go through some of this at this point, which is crazy. You've now had to look at your wife and be like, oh, hey, it's just us now. So
mhm.
it's like an entire new dating slash falling in love process, because you're not the people you were 20 years ago, or 22 years ago when you had the twins, or 20 years ago when you had the youngest. And you just said it, it's so easy for parents to make it all about their kids, and they forget. And often I tell people that have young kids and stuff, I'm like, the first person you should greet when you walk in the door is your spouse, right? Then the kids, then the dog, all that stuff, because it's easy to get excited about the kids because they run to you and all that stuff. But it reaches a point where those kids really don't want anything to do with you and are ready to move on with their life. So how's that? So how's that process been of being in a home with your wife, just the two of you, kind of reimagining your marriage?
Wow, that's a great question. So a little bit of context for it. So we had we had the twins before our first anniversary of marriage, and we dated for like essentially 2 years before we got married. So
Okay.
so it was from when we got married, it was okay, we're in the kids realm. And then having twins first, if you know people who have twins, it's just like a full speed.
You went straight into man to man coverage.
Right. All consuming. I had also started my first company the year before we got married. So it was a massive challenge. And that really felt like a 22-year sprint, right? Of hands-on, kids first. I was the kind of husband, for better or worse. I mean, one, my career was very all consuming. I traveled a lot. That was something that was at times was really tough, but I was also very hands-on and very,
Yep.
and I was the husband that said, look, we're doing date night and we're doing it once a week. And so that was hard at times because it's like that isn't necessarily what she wants to do. When, it's a long week and she's 1 on 3 sometimes, right? Which is a lot. But
Yep.
we did that and that ended up being a good experience. I think good for the long term. When when things really started to shift, I remember I went from this with her being like, okay, I need to help her think about what's next because when the kids are going off to college, that's going to be a big deal. I helped for probably a month, right? And then she really found it. She found a Pilates business and took it over and has poured her heart into it and has really done great. And then she found some personal and professional development stuff that's really jazzing her up. Then she started another company. And it really quickly, for me, if I'm totally candid, went from, ooh, I'm going to help her in this next phase to being like, wait for me. Like, 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 why are you doing this? Like, is this like I joke with people that I'm married to myself from 15 years ago, right? When I was
Yeah. Yeah.
running a business and it felt like it was all on me. And it honestly, it's in my best moments. I'm unbelievably proud of her. In my weakest moments, I'm like, oh, can't we like go back to where it was comfortable for me? And I think it's the answer is no. And that's not our family is not that. We do the uncomfortable stuff. And it can be like I remember thinking our kids have really scattered, one in California, two in Dallas, us in Boulder in Florida. And I'm like, did we make the right choice? Like, couldn't we have kept them like a little closer?
Yeah.
And the answer is no. That's not what we've done. So it hopefully this kind of self-disclosure is kind of helpful. But yeah, on the marriage front, we're definitely in some new phase, and it's been that way for a year. And I am I am the one that's trailing on this one, right? And
Yeah.
so it's a really interesting shift, you know. It's a really interesting shift for Jen and I to go through, and yeah, it is both of us going through it in our own ways.
Well, and it's so interesting because I get to cheat because I know some of your personal stuff and we've been on our own journey together and stuff. But it's so interesting because you're trying to like slow down and still just enjoy, but she's trying to speed up because she's been focused on the kids and she's like, I get to get a career back and I get
Mhm.
to get business. And you're going, well, I've already done that. And she's like,
I know.
that's great, but I haven't. Right. And so it's certainly interesting because I think from what you've shared and the conversation we've had is she was your supporting cast, if you will. And that doesn't
Mhm.
take away from how hard her job was as a parent, right? And that's a full-time job. But from a business standpoint, she was your supporting cast member and
Mhm.
now it's altered, right? Where you're like,
Yep.
okay, you've built and sold a couple companies, you've been part of, a startup and then part of being bought and acquired by, one of the largest companies in the world, period, but also from a co-working, the largest. And you're going, well, what am I wait, and now I'm the advisor, now I'm the supporting cast member. And so it's certainly interesting because I'm excited for this for you because I know some of your personal journey and you're having to go, okay, this isn't about me, right? This has nothing to do with the Ben show, right? It's got to do with how can I support her and love her and how can I support my children and love them through these phases that I get to play an advisory role in. And you get to go, yes, I like Abe, but she's not going to go, well, Dad, is it okay if I marry Abe? Nope.
So you're touching on something actually really powerful, which is I think a lot of, I think this applies to the flexible workspace industry, but also anyone in their career. I think we judge ourselves by our works, right? Or by what we do. And I have been that person. And one of the things that I've had to, meaning, you know, am I my worth comes from what I do, right? And at least in large measure, right? Not exclusively. In the last few years, one of the things that's been really helpful to me is to say, well, what if my worth didn't come from that, right? And what if it came from something else? And that has been, my parents were leading doctors, both of them. My mom still is, and in her mid 80s, she's a world-renowned Alzheimer's expert. Great. And I was raised by two people whose work defined them. My dad was an oncologist and all of that. Very, very important to the people that they're serving. I I soaked that in and said, well, hey, what I do is really important to who I am. Now in this environment, I think I, you know, I think that leads you to say, oh, this is the Ben show. But like I want to seek the Ben show. And I that was so comfortable for me for so long, and by extension, so uncomfortable for it not to be that, that it's been a really important shift and challenging shift. So the other thing that makes it harder is my wife has no interest in me slowing down either. She's like, no, no,
Right.
no, like we're still building, man. You're only 54. You got 10 more years in you. I'm not joking. Like that's the mindset. And so she's the daughter of an entrepreneur. So this is coming really, I don't want to say easily because she's really worked hard at it and is just crushing it and putting the effort in every day. But yeah, this isn't so I've got to find a way to support both at work and at home and grow. Right. And so it's if you can see my discomfort, it It's because it's there, right? It is a new phase. So it's been really, really challenging and scary, but I've learned a lot, which has been fun.
Well, so much of it is a battlefield of the mind, right? And it's funny. Willie Gutierrez and I are pretty close, and he'll send me Bible studies and be like, "Hey, let's do this together." And so one of is on surrender, right? And I'm so bad at it, right? I want to control everything, and the idea of surrender and being like, "What do you mean it's not about me?" And what do you mean? My worth isn't in how many deals I closed last year or how many people showed up at the GWA conference, and stepping back and being like, all I can do is the best that I can do. And what comes from that, is out of my control in a lot of ways. And so I'm excited for this stage for you because I know, how uncomfortable it can be. I mean, I've been uncomfortable for 16 years or longer than that, but going on 17 years of kind of self realization and growth. And every time I peel the layers at the end, I'm like, oh, sweet. And then I'm like, oh no, another one? What now? And so it's so fun. And I think, getting back on track from an AI perspective, I think that's just it is we're going to continue. This discomfort's going to continue, right? It's like, okay, well, now I'm learning how to do memes and put faces in and do videos like I talked about. But there's people out there doing like real, I mean, like, AI bots is simple to look at these chat bots that are handling sales calls. And now you've got people doing board of directors. And, before you know it, I mean, do we end up having robots that are handling the front desk because they can do some of that, but yet you don't get the personal touches, right? But do we add to that in some way or shape or form? And, I'm excited to just continue to read the next few I don't know what you call them. This is a multiple paper series, if you will. What are you calling it? The Ben Wright AI mini series
Yeah.
by Taylor Sheridan.
It's basically it's about the fallacies of AI and the actual like real promise of AI. That's what I'm calling it. And because there are both, right? With anything, you know, you could apply that to marriage, you could apply it to technology, you could apply it to anything. There are certain things we get overhyped about, and there are certain things that we probably underestimate, right?
Yeah.
I think we can agree this is going to be as impactful as the internet, right? Which when you are 54, you could see how the world has changed, right? Like we I had this experience in Tempe, Arizona, where I got into a Waymo at the airport, went to our Airbnb. We had almost no time before we needed to be at a meeting, but we wanted to drop our bags at the Airbnb. So we booked the car online. The car was a computer driving us. We got a code to check into our Airbnb. We also ordered DoorDash from Chipotle to get there right when the car got there. We pulled up to the house, literally grabbed the bag. The delivery guy was walking back to his car when we got there, dropped our bags in, took the food I shouldn't say this, but took the food in the Waymo where there was no driver to care if we were eating our food in the Waymo. So we had our lunch and showed up to the meeting. It was like this utopian tech ecosystem thing, right? There'll be more and more, one other thing I kind of dream about is self-driving cars. I've turned into a Sprinter van aficionado, and I imagine the days where I don't actually have to drive it. I can just go to
Yeah.
bed in Dallas, right? And wake up in Jacksonville, like, and not be on a plane and not worry about it. Like, that is mind blowing. So,
And
you know,
scary. I
yeah.
still, for the record, I still won't get in a Waymo. It's too creepy for me. I'm like, I just want to reach across and be like, let me just grab the steering wheel. Right.
Well, so this is a really interesting one because people talk about where's the adoption of AI. And I do think the computer to human interaction is the hard part. Like, I know I'm talking to an AI, right? But the computer to computer relationships can be better. Like the data and the feedback from customers with Waymo is they feel very comfortable. many cases more comfortable than a human driver. So you're in the minority in this case. That
Yeah.
is AI to machine communication. So those types of things like automations and things like that, data cleaning in systems, that I believe that's the adoption that's going to come the fastest. It's the human interface where people are like, yeah, I'll talk with a customer service agent because the alternative is a really low skill, poorly trained human. If I can get the answer from a computer, I'll do it. It'll start there. But yeah, it'll be easier to make machines work better than to have the human to computer interface. That's my view.
Well, I think it all good. A lot of what we do is I tell people, how's that a mirror your life? Right. And the fact that I don't trust a Waymo explains why, from a faith base, I can't surrender my life to something that I can't see. Right. Where it's like,
Hmm.
everyone's like, let Jesus take the wheel. And I'm like, but it's a Waymo, right? I mean, how do I know it's going the right direction? I want to be in not only in the front seat, I want to be in the driver's seat. And so it's like, back to your point is, yes, I know that people that surrender their life are the ones that have the most peace, but I just can't get there, right? I hope to get there at some point, but it's a journey for me.
Well,
So,
from a mindset perspective, up until now, you haven't been able to get there. But
yeah,
every day is a choice, man.
that is so true. When's the next part of the series? Part two,
Yeah, so
when's that
they'll
release?
come out every Thursday. So
Okay.
I don't know when this is gonna run, but so it'll be Thursday, January 15th, and then every
Okay.
Thursday after that for 7 weeks. And we're gonna do sounds like we're gonna do a some panel stuff around this, which will be
Yeah.
great. I think there are a lot of really interesting voices including some of the leading operators who are kind of being quiet about what they're really doing. But I think there's a lot of really practical voices and smart uses of this that I hope will surface as we go through this together.
Do you have any idea how many parts?
7.
Okay. So let's do this. So this one actually released this week, should release tomorrow. So
Great.
before part two comes out, people have the option to listen. And then let's do another one after the part seven's released.
Let's do it.
So, in 7 weeks we'll have another one. And then you and I talked about, so we're gonna do an AI panel at the end of this month with GWA on a webinar. And then you're gonna lead an AI conversation at the Immersive in Dallas the first
Yep.
week of March. So
You
I'm
betcha.
excited about that. Thank you so much for, as always, spending time with me. And, not just from a professional standpoint, but, I love how our relationship has grown personally too. And I've been able to come alongside you and hear some of the journeys with your family and the girls and your Sprinter van and all kinds of stuff. So I'm
Two
grateful to be a part of that.
two offers. You're in Denver next week, so let's get together.
Yeah.
I'll be in Dallas that weekend, the end of next week in Dallas. So we got two
Perfect.
opportunities to hang.
Yeah, let's definitely make it happen. I really
All right.
appreciate it. Thanks
All
so
right.
much, Ben.